Hey, que Pasa Calexico? Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm here at the Imperial Valley Desert Museum. Before we begin, Kristin O'Lear, one of the curator,
I'm the head curator here.
One of the curators here at the museum, would like to acknowledge that we are in tribal land. So,
yes.
Can you?
Okay. Yep. So we would like to say the Imperial Valley Desert Museum recognizes its place on the traditional lands of the Kumeyaay Nation, who have been here, as they say, since the beginning, with a vibrant and rich history dating back over 10,000 years. The lands of Imperial and San Diego County include the traditional lands of many indigenous groups comprised of the Quechan, Kuya, Kokopah, Pai Pai, and Kumeyaay. And each of these groups are still present and active today.
Thank you. We're here, and like I said, at the Imperial Valley Desert Museum, and I'm joined by Kristin O'Lear and Luis Landeros. Thank you guys for being here today and invited me to the museum. It's my first time here. I think every time I drive by from San Diego, I think a lot of us from Imperial Valley, when we're coming down the mountain, we see it and we wonder what it is. And it's my first time here, like I said, and I really learned a lot. But before we get into the museum, do you guys want to introduce yourselves? Tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Yeah, sure. I'm Luis Landeros, the education coordinator. Currently, I'm also an IBC student. So I'm trying to get my degree for mechanical engineering, which I know if you think education coordinator mechanical engineering is like, what is this guy doing here? But I started working here just because I had a family member that used to work here. So I got introduced, and then as an education specialist, and then I became an education coordinator. And I've been an education coordinator for the past 6 months. So cool. Not a long time, but we've been doing some good stuff, which hopefully we'll talk about during the podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. And I'm Kristin O'Lear, and I'm the head curator here. So basically what that means, my job entails making sure that I look after the 30,000 artifacts that we have in our storage and collection space, as well as do exhibit development, design, and fabrication. So we usually like to do one yearly one that's like a permanent exhibit for about 4 months, and then little pop-up exhibits throughout the year, which is what you see right now. So usually in December we do that. So it's a lot of responsibility. We're small but mighty to do all of that. Yeah.
What's the how big is the staff here?
So pretty much everyone that you see, I don't know if you saw Julie in the back, but George up front, and then Kristin and I. And then there's 2 more staff members that are not here currently. David, which is the executive director, he's on vacation, so that's why he's not here. And then Frank, which is, what is Frank's actual position?
Yeah, it's Frankzalazar, and he's our cultural resources manager. So when we get a new collection in, especially since it's indigenous, we make sure that we have him here. He's a member of the Kumeyaay tribe, Campo, and he's here to look over everything to what they are, any type of meaning. If anything needs to be repatriated back to the tribes, goes through him. So he plays a really vital and important part in our institution. So there's 6 to 7 members of staff at all times.
Oh, okay. Frank's, that name sounds familiar. Do you know if he lives in Imperial?
No, he lives on the reservation in Campo.
Okay. So and then it's probably
It might
like
be a different Frankzalazar. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, is it him? But I didn't know he worked there, so it's not him, obviously. But so because some of the visitors that come here, do you think that there are people that are driving by that are from out of town, or is it a lot of locals that come visit the?
I would say a lot of our visitors are traveling by, or it's kind of a little bit of combination. Mm-hmm. So we get a lot of people who constantly I drive by all the time and I've never stopped in, and now you're open. And then we get a lot of people who just happen to be passing through and want to check out the museum. So I think too, we're also a member of the Harvest Host, which is like an RV community. So then if you're driving through the US and you want to kind of stop, you can call ahead and schedule when we have spots in our parking lot for them to stay overnight. So that's another way we get a lot of out-of-town visitors.
Oh, okay.
Then also during during the winter season, which for us it's not really. I mean, for us it's winter, but for everyone else it's like spring.
Shorts and sandals.
So all the people that you see out there in shorts and sandals are usually like snowbirds, and they stay somewhere like in Ocotillo or in El Centro, and they actually come to the museum a lot because most of the people do know the museum for whatever reason, which is pretty unique and strange if you think about it. But yeah.
Yeah, because like I said, for us, it's something that we drive by, and I mean, I don't know if it's just me, but I see it and I'm like, one day I'm gonna stop by, but I hardly, I don't know, we're always in the prairie or whatever, and we don't stop by. But now that I visited, it's there's a lot of really interesting stuff that I didn't know about the valley. When I went to Hoover Dam, I learned about the water coming out from the Colorado River, but the exhibit you guys have here is really detailed on how the soil we have is really rich and good for crops because of the minerals that came down from the Colorado and the mountains and all that. So do you guys have something that people that come here are like, oh, I didn't know this about the Imperial Valley, or I didn't know this about, for me, like even the tribes, like I didn't know we have this many tribes, and you see the names when you're driving by, but coming here, it gives you a better perspective of what they mean and who they are. Is there anything that you guys are commonly talking about with the guests?
So pretty much almost everyone that comes here tells us that they didn't know anything about what was in the museum. So something pretty interesting is we do like activities with the juvenile hall kids. So we go out there once a week and we do an activity with them, a presentation, and most of the kids don't know about it, but also like the guards that are there, like the I think they're called COs, corrections officers. But most of them, they don't know. They're like, wow, we have tribes in the valley. Like we have, you guys, there's a museum out there. Like there's all these things that we didn't know about. And then when you're talking about them, like the Colorado River, or the different tribes in the area, they're all like, wow, this is amazing. How did we not know about this?
And like another one too is the history of water in the valley. Like people are always surprised that the current Salton Sea is actually just remnants of ancient Lake Kowea, and just how diverse like the water history is, how ancient Lake Kowea filled and receded 4 times, like over millennia. And then when people had moved into the valley, and then the irrigation, from the Colorado River, how that impacted, and there was, the break in the irrigation canal, and then like having the flood. Yeah. And how that is like a natural remnants, and the fact that it's like since the 1970s it's disappearing, and like as far as we're aware, there are no current conservation efforts to save the Salton Sea. So again, it'll be part of that natural process where it drives back up, and then there's nothing.
Yeah.
So
I think the last time I heard is that they want to bring water from Ciudad Cortez and bring it to Salton Sea. Yeah,
that would be wonderful to keep that alive.
Yeah, it's crazy how it's a long way to bring water to save but I mean, we got to do something because it's not, it's not good.
No, it's definitely drying up, and at an alarming rate.
I have a question. There's a sign there about a tarantula. Is it? There's 2, right?
Yeah.
And are they alive? Because I'm arachnophobic.
No, they're not real.
Okay.
No, so the actual tarantulas aren't alive. It's just more like a little like activity for the kids when they come in. Because I know sometimes when you're smaller, you're looking at the museum or wherever you go, and it's like not as interesting to you when you're a little kid as to when you start growing up. I mean, it depends on the museum. Like this one is a lot more. I feel like it's more for like that teenage group, like older. We do tons of activities at smaller age groups, but I do feel like most of the content inside is tailored more to like a little bit of the older group. Not so much like older people, but just like teenagers and above. But yeah, so that's why we do a lot of activities with kids. But the tarantula is just like a little like, oh, keep an eye out. So they're not real. They're just, and we move them every so often. So
okay, yeah, I was like, I read it. I was like, oh man, I hope they're not real because I'm arachnophobic. So can you tell us a little bit about the exhibits that you currently have?
Yeah. So the museum is divided up into 4 main sections, and they're all kind of color coded. I don't know if you noticed, like that walking through in terms of like the area that they're in. So the one that we're actually sitting in is is our visible storage, and it actually highlights some of the most beautiful and still in one piece pottery
part.
For the most part, yeah. There are some reconstructed Oyas. But like anything that you actually see on the floor in terms of exhibit is really only 1% of what we have. Like I mentioned, we have actually over 30,000 artifacts. So the majority of like a lot of the work that I do is actually in the back, making sure that they're preserved and meeting industry standards in terms of temperature and humidity back there. So we also have the water with the Masters of the Desert. So it's the water section and details that diverse history. We have the archaeology section, which we have actually done in 3 voices. So you have the voice of the indigenous peoples, you have the archaeologists, you have us as the museum, and then as well as BLM. So I guess it's 4 different perspectives in terms of what does that mean for this area. Because in the 1970s, that was a really big, I wouldn't say industry, but a really big part of the Imperial Valley College student curriculum. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of archaeology done in the 1970s. And then we have our geology section, which isn't quite finished. That's actually what we're working on right now to really kind of showcase just the beautiful amount of diversity. So like obsidian, volcanic activity, basalt, other kind of...
It's like soapstone.
Yeah, Wonderstone.
Soapstone is actually one of the soapstone is one of the most unique rocks out here, I think. And just in terms of how it's composed and the qualities it has, the characteristics, it really holds heat for a long period of time. So that's something the indigenous people took advantage of, and they would use it to strain their arrows. And that's just because that rock is specific to that.
And so every exhibit is kind of designed in mind to act as a platform to really showcase the Kumeyaay and other indigenous communities' ability to not only survive but thrive in this environment. There's a lot of negative connotation with thinking that they're primitive but really they're advanced and really miraculous. And we've learned a lot in terms of how they've used ethnobotany and the pottery and the water. And, they were, Luis can talk more detail in terms of like not transitory, but they were migrant.
Semi-nomadic?
Yes, thank you, semi-nomadic. And how they would travel and really, depending on the season, depending on location, and would move around to really make the most of this desert environment.
Yeah, and something that I saw was how they had caches of water where they would need water when they were traveling, and mm-hmm. it's funny how they especially like to find material to keep the water that wouldn't evaporate, and when you would come back there was no water there because it's evaporated.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really phenomenal.
Yeah, it's crazy. I saw the water the exhibit, and like you said when we were talking earlier, it's really crazy how much change happened, and especially when in the beginning when they built the canals, and then the levees broke and then it flooded, mm-hmm. and all this stuff. And it's crazy that for most of us living here in the Imperial Valley, like I feel like it's something that should be kind of like taught in our schools. I don't know if you want to chime in on that.
Yeah.
That's also something I think is really important. Most of the people that live in the valley don't really know the history of the valley, at least me personally. And I remember in high school, they didn't teach us any of this. So to me, it is something that is kind of strange that they wouldn't teach you the history of your own place, like your own area. And that's something I'm always talking about. It just seems like unusual that they wouldn't, because it's something so important.
Well, and then something you address with the field trips.
Yeah, so we do. That's currently something that we're trying to work on, and we do field trips with. This past school year, we did field trips with Seal Elementary School District, with Mount Empire School District, with El Centro School District, and that's just there's different. We didn't do them in person because of COVID, but we did virtual field trips. And I know I was mentioning earlier if you need any tech stuff, because we had to purchase all this stuff and adapt to the new standards, I guess you could even call them, the new situation that we were in. And that's something that we did. But we try to do field trips, and that's to bring awareness of the history of the valley, because a lot of people don't know about them and they don't really teach it to you in schools. So I think it's really important to know the history of where you come from.
Yeah, and even going back to the tribes, we learn about the Comanche and the all these other tribes that we are taught in schools, but learning about our local tribes should be something that should be also taught in schools. Or I know it's kind of hard to incorporate new stuff just because it comes from the state or Washington or whatever, but I don't know, maybe like an after school program or something that people could could learn about, our local history, because it's I don't know, it's something that I was like looking around, I was like, oh man, there's so much history here that I didn't even know, and I'm almost 40 years old, so it's crazy.
Or I think maybe even like in high school, how you have electives, maybe you make it like a separate history class and just an elective of, like, if you want to learn about it, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another way that we've also tried to address it is we received funding last year to actually produce 13 10-minute videos, and they actually range from kindergarten all the way through high school to 12th grade, and they're on YouTube. They're free for any educator who wants to use them, but each one is focused on that particular grade level and incorporates stuff from the valley about the Kumeyaay and other indigenous groups and the local geology and things like that. So it's all a matter of raising awareness, and then us as a small institution getting access to funds that allow us to do that, and then partnerships and everything like that.
Speaking of funds, where do you guys get your funds to keep the museum running?
Oh gosh, so it really kind of depends. Most of what we do is grant based. We are small, so everyone on staff has written a grant to do certain projects and things like that. So that's primarily how we do it. There are other things that I'm not fully aware of in terms of how the budget goes that do provide it, but a lot of it is grant writing and moving that kind of stuff forward.
Like Kristin said, most of the funding comes from grants, the education to the staff. So not necessarily me, but the other two education specialists that are on staff are actually also funded through field trips. So all those field trips are hours for them to get more money for themselves, I guess. But yeah, so that's how it's funded. Most of the education projects are grant funded. Right now we're currently working on, so the last 2 months, I think it started in February or January. But February and January, I was working the previous education team, and we just had a bunch of staff changes, and that's just because some of them go on to become teachers, and it's really exciting for them to actually be doing what they want to do. But so they took off, and then we had 2 new staff members. But with the previous staff, the education staff, we were working on 30 panels that were designed in-house by us, and now we're currently working on placing them outside, and we have the first 10 outside. I don't know if you walked a little bit outside. I know it's warmer right now.
I walked just the front. I didn't.
Yeah, so I think there's 3 of them in the front at the moment, but there's a few, and there's 30 along the whole trail system in front. But that's something that we worked on, and we got funded through a grant. Do you remember the exact name of it?
Yes, because I wrote it down somewhere.
I believe it was Imperial Valley Foundation.
Yeah, Imperial Valley Community Foundation.
Imperial Valley Community Foundation.
And they made that possible.
Yeah, so they made those 30 panels possible, and we actually did design them to be something that we could use, and then sort of bring us into the technology era at the moment, because most of our stuff is not very tech wise, because it was up to it was made 10 years ago, actually no, less than that, but it was just when tech was starting to take off. So those panels have QR codes on them now. You can log on, you can see more info. The QR codes will register that you logged on, and it'll give us percentage based on how much activity is they're getting. So it's really cool to see all that stuff, because you can see what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
For instance, too, a lot of businesses, a lot of places were really impacted by COVID, and we were no different. So even though we were closed for over a year, once the order had gone out, but in that time, we had received a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, MILS, and their really big grant funding opportunity. And in that, we actually did a complete redesign of our storage space, which you can't see. It's not on the floor. It's all behind the scenes, pretty much like my dungeon where I live. But initially, we had our collections in 4 separate rooms, and anyone in the museum field can tell you that's not ideal. You don't want to have collections apart from each other or disassociated. So this allowed us to have those 4 rooms completely broken down, and then now everything is in one. So that was made possible by IMLS and the Imperial Valley, Imperial County Courthouse. They've been going digital over the last couple of years, and they actually donated a lot of shelving to us. So we would actually go there after hours, 5 to midnight, and we'd be just tearing up the floors and taking what we could back with us. And now that's in the back there. So with all of our boxes and our shelving, We have the USDA also to thank for new AC units, which is what keeps us so nice and cool, and new carpet. So the carpet that you see, we just installed in November of 2020.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's really cool, really nice and fresh in here.
Wow. Oof. Because last year when it was broken, it was like 90 in the building. So
Yeah, during the summer when we were doing all the shelf work that Kristin was talking about,
Construction,
the ACs broke down, and that big room, well, those tiny rooms was now a big room, and the AC unit for that room broke. So like we had the doors open with fans and like throwing AC from the other places, like the cool air. So it was definitely a rough time. Also, they're not like just regular shelves; they're rolling shelves. I'm sure you'll get to see if you have enough time to go a tour, like give you a tour in the back. But yeah, they're rolling shelves, so they're like they take up less space. Their footwear is smaller, and then they widen up, but they take up like they can store as much stuff as a regular shelf.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I've seen them like on TV where you kind of put them together, and like if you need something in between, you open them and you.
Yeah, so they got like levers, and you pull them open, and then you close them back up.
I've seen them like in crime shows where like they go into like the file room.
Absolutely.
That's it.
That's what
Yep,
it looks
those
like
are
right
it.
there.
Okay. Hey guys, sorry for the quick interruption. I really wanted to take this time and thank my anchor sponsors. I really appreciate your sponsorship, guys. Thank you for helping me make this podcast better every day with your sponsorship. I want to thank my friends Camilo, Jake, Edward Velasquez, John Cabrera from AmeriCorp, Eddie Lopez from Roots Creative, Miss Norma Sierra Galindo, our friends at Dents on Border. If you have any small dents or scratches in your car, make sure you hit up our friends at Dents on Border, and they'll have your car looking like new in no time. I also want to thank Sergio's Tacos and Hot Dogs. With 8 years of serving the Imperial, San Diego, and Yuma counties with Mexicali-style hot dogs and taquizas, make sure you contact Sergio at 760-562-0057 or look for Sergio's Tacos and Hot Dogs in Facebook. Finally, I want to thank David Gastelum. If you're thinking of buying or selling a home in the Imperial or San Diego counties, make sure you contact David. He's not only a realtor, but an investor with over 20 years of experience, and he'll teach you along the way one of the most important investments of your life. His phone number is 760-235-9576, or just look for David Gastelum on Facebook. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for still listening and your sponsorship. And now back to the show. Peace. So, do you guys have a favorite exhibit from the museum that you like to show off when people come by?
I'd say probably my favorite at the moment would be the history of water one, like you were talking about. I know we've been talking about this one a lot, but it just really shows you the history of the valley, and you would never think that the valley, a place so hot and with little water, would get flooded someday. Yeah, which it did in 1907, but like you would never think of those things. And I'd say also the geology one, but that's mostly because we've been developing a lot of the stuff in there. So I think that's more because we've been working on it.
Yeah, in addition to the water, because I know that's a personal favorite of mine, but I love the visible storage that we're sitting in, right now. And I just love coming in here and looking at the artistry that goes into it. I mean, the time. I mean, it could take months to make some of these beautiful pieces of pottery that you see. So just to come in, like spend time when it's quiet, just really look at them and take them in, or like share, stories and things, about them is really wonderful.
Yeah, and because like you see them and they obviously made them and then they decorated them. So like, you think of like what were they thinking when they were like decorating?
Yeah,
what they were trying to fit it into their dwelling, or what's the deal, right?
Yeah, like meanings unknown. Yeah, we're not really sure what they were.
It's crazy.
Yeah, but it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's whenever we do a field trip and we're talking about the visible storage, that's something we really try to emphasize. Anything with drawings on it, we can't translate it, or we can't like say this is what this means, because it might be disrespectful to the person that made it. Maybe they had a dream one day, they woke up, they're like, I'm gonna paint this on my Oya, and then now that person's gone. But that's mainly because the Kumeya's history was all orally passed down. Like nothing was written down. So everything we know now is through stories.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's crazy.
And we definitely want to leave that space for the Kumeyaay to tell that story. So,
do you guys have some of the tribe members that are still around come by and talk about or talk to you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that we still are actively trying to work on. We know that it's a sensitive, subject with working with an institution like ours. We wouldn't, Indigenous representation, but we're working on it. And we have Indigenous members on our board, on staff, and we do have Kumeyaay that come in, or other Indigenous members and offer their perspective and their insight, like look at our collections. And that's a really wonderful thing. I think that's especially grown like within the last year to have them be a part of it. And like, we're currently working on a Kumeyaay internship program that's specifically towards Kumeyaay youth to come in and work in the archives, so that we as an institute can teach them how the museum works, but then they teach us the cultural aspect of what the artifacts mean.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, really interesting. Any new, besides the archaeological one, any new exhibits that you guys are planning on having in the future?
Yeah, so I think the major one that we're working on right now, grant funding and technology-wise, is the geology exhibit. We really, we want to get an interactive table and, better display cases to show like the obsidian and other pieces that we have in the back that are from this area. And in terms of that, that's the major ongoing one, unless you can think of.
No, that is the major one. That's currently known as our Phase 3 exhibit. That's just because it was all sort of built in phases. So that one is the third one, and it's the final one, I guess we could call it. We're still definitely trying to work on the outside. We have a tourist enclosure outside, and that's mainly for like animals that are in danger of extinction. And Speedy's outside, which is our desert tortoise. But we're trying to do a pupfish pond, and that's something because those are also in danger of extinction. It's a really tiny fish, not very big. So that's something that we're trying to work on the outside. But in terms of the inside, Phase 3, which is the geology one, is the only one we're working on at the moment.
So outside, does it extend to the outside as well, the museum?
Oh yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. We steward like 200 acres on behalf of the Kumeyaay. Well, I mean, we can't build on all of it. That's we just make sure that we keep an eye out in case anything is happening or trespassing, things like that, to make sure to keep it safe. But there are other areas that are open for development that we are actively trying to do. So we want a boardwalk down. We have a facility called the APC, which is the Agricultural and Propagation Center, and that we would like to see as an off-site location, for growing, doing botany and growing plants and really tending or really doing other crafts. So we're looking into funding to actually build a boardwalk from here, all the way down to that location. We want to do a pup pond, the pupfish pond, and have, the water outside and, have different animals and things like that are in danger that we want to protect and that are natural to this environment.
Yeah, that'll be awesome because, we have a lot of animals here that, obviously when we're at home, we don't see them because we've built, but out here that, it's we're basically in the middle of the desert and there's a lot of, I guess, wild animals still around that. Do you guys see any animals when you're...
Yeah, I haven't. I did see a coyote the other evening.
Oh, wow.
And then we had an incident where it was a little graphic, but I came in and a coyote had slaughtered a jackrabbit on our property, and I had to clean him up. So yeah, we definitely get active critters. We've had a couple snakes and tarantulas and lizards in the building. Well, not so like the tarantulas haven't made it into the building yet. They're just around, but the lizard and the baby snake did. So yeah, definitely active.
Yeah, when I was walking by down in here, I was a little bit cautious because I know it's a desert, so obviously, spiders, snakes, lizards. I'm okay with lizards but yeah, those spiders and snakes are my thing. But I was cautious because I was like, I'm in the middle of the desert. It's not like when I'm in my backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely spotted some wildlife, and the jackrabbits are really, really cute. They're really sweet. Yeah.
Usually you don't see a whole lot of wildlife. You do definitely you walk up in the morning and then there's a jackrabbit that jumps out of the bushes so you do see them, but snakes and tarantulas mostly keep to themselves for the most part.
And I think are they nocturnal or?
Tarantulas, yes.
Yeah.
Snakes are half and half. They are mostly out during the day, but since it's so hot, it also burns them a little. So, but the other day we were installing those panels outside and we were digging holes, and we had already dug the holes, and they were putting cement into them because those were doing those in-house. We're all doing that. We didn't pay anyone else to do it. But David walks up, which is our executive director, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna pull the dirt out."
Yeah, he was about to pour the cement in.
And he saw there was a little baby snake in there, that had made a home there. So he had to pull it out and then let it go.
Yeah, turned into a rescue mission to get the little guy out before we put in the cement.
Yeah.
And David's also terrified of snakes, FYI.
Really?
So
wow.
it was probably not a very fun time for him.
I bet not. Is there anything you guys that you want to share that I haven't asked you about or talked about?
Well, I think what we're really excited now that not that COVID has passed in terms of like lifting of restrictions, that we have a lot of activities coming up that we really want to draw attention to. So we recently started working with the local USDA branch of APHIS, which is the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. So we're actually partnering with them to focus on local entomology in the desert. So they're actually, so it's going to be Hannah Cornwell and Deborah de la Riva. I'm working on my Spanish. I'm taking classes. So they're actually going to come out and do what's called an evening with an expert. So to come and speak on local entomology, like their job working with like the U.S. border to Mexico border, making sure there's no transfer of animals or plants that shouldn't be happening. And then the next day actually do an evening event where we put a black light up and like a sheet and then have the bugs crawl, and then they kind of explain like which ones are which and then their function in the natural habitat. So that one's we're really looking forward to. So that's going to be August 20th and 21st that I've personally partnered with to make that happen. And then Luis can talk about the...
Yeah, so I believe it's July 17th, July 31st, and August. So we have traditional craft days, and these are days where you can come out and do like an indigenous activity with us. Mainly the ones we do are coiled clay and pendant weaving. So pendant weaving is there's other baskets like the Oyas you see behind us, similar in size, but the pendant is pretty much the bottom of it, like the very bottom of it. Mm-hmm. So it'd be starting it, and then coiled clay is you make like your own mini pot or your mini Oya. And then on August 7th we have stargazing event. So those are in the afternoon. So you come out here and you can see the stars, telescope. We have a presentation, which I believe is going to be Mike Rood. Mm-hmm. So he usually gives a speech and he talks about the different constellations. Those are actually some of our biggest events. We usually get about 200 to 300 people out here in a single night. So, yeah.
And usually they correspond with a specific like activity that's actually going on. So it's going to be the Perseid meteor shower. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Mike would know. Maybe he'll yell at me later. Yeah. But yeah, usually it revolves around a specific type of event. And it's really in honor of the Kumeyaay, who are actually stargazers, and they've actually had star charts and would look up and, monitor celestial events. So nothing that we do is without their history and their consideration. Yeah.
That's awesome. So where can people find, these events? Is there a website you guys have that you...
Yeah. So we're actually really excited because we got a grant this year to do a complete revamp of our website. So if anyone's seen it, they know it's pretty bad, like the one that currently exists. It's a little old and outdated. So look forward to that in the fall. We will still be posting updates on the current website, but probably the best place is going to be Facebook and our Instagram. And we also release an events calendar on paper too. So anyone that comes in and may just like are driving by, haven't been here before and are local, then we can actually hand out the slips. So we should be releasing all of those dates next week on the 30th.
Okay. Is there a fee? Is there a fee to come in? I just came in. And
No, normally there isn't a $5 admission fee, but we've actually been waiving that right now in lieu of kind of our ongoing construction and things that we have going on. So we always encourage donations, but they're never required. But so any of our events other than the evening with an expert are free for the public to come and do.
Oh, okay. Cool. So, and then they can go to your website and your Instagram for like the hours that currently you guys are having. And
yeah, so you guys can go to our website, which is Imperial Valley Desert Museum, and then our Facebook and our Instagram are also Imperial Valley Desert Museum, and we're pretty active on there. So if you guys have any questions, you can shoot a message and we'll try to answer it as soon as possible. Sometimes they do get lost in the cracks. Like with Jose, he had texted us a few months ago, but we missed it. We were definitely pretty excited to do this podcast with them, but we completely missed the text.
No worries. I mean, it happens to me too, where like somebody will text me and to me, like I said earlier, this is my hobby. So like when people text me and I'm either working or dealing with family stuff, like, it's second on my list. So yeah, I mean, if you guys are busy here, I understand that social media is not a priority, but no, I really appreciate that you guys, took the time today and invited me to come by and see the museum and talk about, things going on here. And like I said, next time that I'm driving by, I'll for sure bring my family and have them see the museum, because it's really, really, like I said, really interesting. When we went down to the dam, what's it called? Hoover Dam. It's like crazy how much the Hoover Dam had to do with, the Imperial Valley and even that exhibit here with the water. It's, we keep going back to that, but it's amazing it's amazing how, we're connected with, the Hoover Dam, the Colorado River, the minerals that came down here and made our land so rich and so, and for us to grow the crops that we grow and for us to even exist here in the valley, because, otherwise, we probably would have never been here because of that. But yeah, it's crazy.
No, absolutely. I know that when I first moved out here and took this job, it was definitely like a really big learning curve. For me, I'm not from here. Technically I'm a American Civil War historian by trade. So it was really a lot, and I've grown to love it and really be passionate about this area and like the work that we do, and really give a voice to this museum. So.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else that you guys would like to, mention, talk about, anything that I left out?
Let me check my notes. No, I don't. I'm sure as soon as we turn everything off, I'll remember something. But we definitely at least want to say thank you so much for coming out here and asking us to do this. This has been such a treat for us to do. And, thank our local partnerships, people who have really been behind helping us for all these years, our board members, and of course the tribes for their support and working with us.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any other questions for us?
Yeah, anything that we need to?
No, not really.
Related to any of the other exhibits that we're working on, or?
No, not really. You guys did a good job and at kind of like filling in my gaps that I kind of wanted to learn and know about. I saw this big room over here. What's that?
So this one's actually known as our exhibit hall. This is mainly, I know Kristin talked about it earlier. This is more like her stuff, but this is where most of the traveling exhibits like are placed. So if we have, I don't know, say paintings or say pictures, they go up in this room, and we actually have like movable walls that get placed, get put in place, and then they all get taken down when the exhibit leaves. And they're here for like 2 to 3 months at a time.
Okay.
Yeah, like so right now currently on display are our baskets, our kumeyaay baskets that we were lucky enough. So in 2020, David, the executive director, who is here, we were fortunate enough to actually have 2 private collections turned over back into public hands that were kumeyaay specifically. So we actually had driven to Phoenix and Tucson respectively in a U-Haul van to go and pick them up. And we wanted to really showcase, because they have been hidden. I mean, for some of them are hundreds of years that, the family had just kind of collected, and now they're back. So these ones are specifically kumeyaay baskets, and some of them are from the 1970s and are attributed to Maria Quiros, who is from the Manzanita band of kumeyaay that we have. So yeah, we rotate them out, and it's just to maybe showcase like hidden pieces that maybe wouldn't have a lot of attention. And we also have a telescope that was a personal Dobson telescope that was donated to us by a private donor, in the hopes that we actually can create a permanent stargazing area. Okay. So then we can actually have a digital touch screen, and people can see what it's projecting down. That takes grant money and work, but we were lucky enough to at least actually get the telescope.
Yeah. So if there's anybody like here in the community that might have like artifacts that they could date back to the tribes here, can they bring it in and donate it and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, so everything is kind of subject to approval. We definitely have to, we want to make sure that we're only taking in local, like Imperial Valley, maybe San Diego County, as far reach. And then people also have to be careful, because there are laws in place. Like if you're out hiking and you see an artifact, you're supposed to leave it in place and then notify who's ever.
Most of the artifacts have already been tagged.
Yeah.
So people know, like the government knows where they're set, and like the kumeyaay.
Oh. Okay.
But yeah, timing is really key. We really can't, like if something was picked up by like a private individual, like after the 1970s, we tend to not accept those collections, because there are laws in place, making it illegal to go and just kind of pick up whenever you were hiking.
Yeah.
So
like
we definitely have to be very careful. But like it is a possibility for people to come and donate. But we do like to keep artifacts local, and then before a certain time period. That way, we're not taking something that is tagged or anything like that.
Yeah, it's not finders keepers, like
Right.
found.
Which there can be a lot of cases. Like the Oya that's actually over there, the kids like to call it the lizard pot, the lizard Oya. That one was a perfect example of hikers that had gone out. They found it like in a cache, like hidden away, like the Fabian Oya that you saw over here. And they're like, oh, that's really beautiful. Like we should take this and show somebody. And they actually had hiked down, and they were, like if they had it in a backpack, had like hiked down, and they're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have done it. But like they couldn't take it back because they'd already made it down. It would have been more risky. So then they actually turned it over to BLM in 2015, and through a series of exchanges, like now we have it and it's safe, but really it should have kind of stayed where it was.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, like Kristin was saying, usually BLM,
Bureau of Land Management.
Bureau of Land Management.
Yeah.
They usually, they'll usually like see where they took it from, and if it's able to be placed back safely, then they'll place it back. But this one, since it was in such a treacherous location, a treacherous hike,
it was more dangerous
to put it back than to actually give it to us.
It's like the best rule of thumb is if you see anything, like leave only footprints. Do a little GPS dot, and then let the people who are in charge of that particular area or oversee that area, let them know, and then they can document it accordingly so that everything stays in place for posterity.
And something that I keep wanting to ask, you say Oyas, like for us in Spanish, Oyas is a pot.
Yeah.
And so I'm guessing that's where the word comes from, Oyas.
Yeah. So Oyas or pots, I know a lot of Kumeyaay do prefer the term vessel. Because those are more like colonization languages, call it a pot or an Oya. So I think they tend to also like vessels or things like that. So
also, the Kumeyaay's had like their own language.
Okay.
So it wasn't like as complete as like languages nowadays, but it's still a language, which Askai, which is for Ipai, and Sakai, which is for Tipai. So there's like two different variants of it. And that is the name for the Oyas, or like Kristin said, the vessels for them.
Oh, okay. So but is the Kumeyaay the only ones that had their own language?
So Ipai and Tipai was mainly for like the tribes in the region. So most of the tribes in the region used that language, those languages. It wasn't just like the Kumeyaay. But since we like focus more on the Kumeyaay than on any of the other tribes, that's why we usually just mention them, but we do try to represent all of the tribes.
Okay.
And they had their own languages as well. We just
Okay. So do you know if most Native American tribes had their own languages? Or
I wouldn't feel comfortable speaking. Yeah, not entirely. Yeah.
We're not like entirely sure, so we would rather not.
But there are really beautiful like maps to and other resources where you can look and actually see the traditional lands, and they have them in all the languages. They would be a better resource.
Yeah.
But there are options where you can actually go.
Yeah, and most of the there's a few dictionaries out there that actually mention like the languages, and usually the names for the dictionaries are like the Barona intertribal languages or the Barona intertribal dictionaries. So it does. Even within tribes, like the language itself would change. There's like different words or different like little excerpts on the word that are the same, but sometimes even the pronunciation would change. So they are pretty similar, but some of them would change.
Yeah, I mean it's like us, we have slang and stuff like that. So yeah, I would kind of like see how that would change in between like regions or sections of where the tribe lived. Yeah, it's crazy how it's been so long, but like we have a lot of similarities in that sense. But.
Yeah. We definitely want to raise awareness too that the tribes they are still very active and they are still very vibrant, and continuing their own cultural traditions. So we don't ever want to make it seem that
they're not here.
That they're not here anymore. That they are very much still present. There are 13 bands here in San Diego and Imperial counties that stretch all the way. So
yeah. So that's something. Yeah, like we do that. We do that where we say like in. But
in the past.
In the past, but they are still very much present. They're still very much here and active, and practicing their beliefs and their culture. So
yeah, for sure. All right, guys. Well, anything else that came up that you would want to add right now before we say our goodbyes?
No,
I don't think so. I think
No?
I'm sure I'll forget again as soon as
I mean, keep
we're
an
done
eye out-
rolling.
Keep an eye out for events. Like,
Yeah.
If you guys are interested to come out, they're all free, like Kristin said.
Mm.
I don't know how well you can hear me because the mic's so far away.
I can,
but
I can hear,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so just if you have any questions, like don't feel free to reach out to us. I'm also doing volunteer days in July. I'll be needing people to come in and help. So if they,
if anyone's interested.
it's not glamorous. It's not going to be a glamorous job. It's a lot of archives and scanning and a lot of backup of records that never were really kind of addressed early on. That's been a big part of my project with the area redesign, is kind of organizing it so whoever comes in after me as curator, can easily access those things. But those dates will be released so we can have people come in who just have a passion, who don't mind doing some paperwork and digitization to help me out to get all that prepared.
Awesome. So again, and I'll post links to your website, to your Instagrams and your Facebook on the notes of the podcast. So if people don't know how to, where to find it, they'll know.
Great.
And yeah, I want to thank you guys again for inviting me. Was really excited to come down. Like I said, I've driven by and never really stopped. Even coming by, I was like, man, I hope I don't pass it and think I'm going to San Diego.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you guys for inviting me. Thank you for showing me around and show me some of the history from the valley. It's really amazing. The museum is really, really beautiful, and all the artifacts you guys have and the information. So thank you again, Kristin and Luis, for your time. I appreciate it.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you for having us on your podcast. It's super awesome.
Yeah, we've had such a blast.
Thank you. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening and watching. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay cool. Peace.